channel, but if not, then we won't.
Okay.
So, hey, I guess I'm going to introduce you just because this is turning into a spontaneous situation where I'm learning about your work, Lynn. Thank you for meeting with me. I'm just curious about your method. I was really intrigued by um, your woods and reconnecting us back to nature, and like it was just really a conversation because I resonate with anybody who wants to uh, foster the healing of the planet through the collective and through women, because women have, I believe, women who are healed or healing uh, disconnection, or wanting to reconnect, and have an innate understanding that we're all connected, that sense of collaboration is what is going to heal the planet. It's going to heal humanity, and like women being in touch with our hearts and our vulnerable hurt places and all of these things, like to share vulnerably with each other, um, is, my mission is to support women who understand and get it. Like my nonprofit that I started this summer, was it in the spring or the summer? It's called All Rise Inc. And the vision is to it's called the vision is to help each other win. That there shouldn't be losers. There shouldn't be a culture of dehumanization. That there should be that there we all deserve to flourish, and in compassionate relationships, that's what we naturally do. We naturally support each other, and I'm just very much happy to like get this out. I know it changes the energy a lot, like to record, at least it does for me. But I just, this is
Totally.
doing its thing. This is what life wants
Oh
to
yeah.
do, and get it. So whatever
Yeah.
you feel, if you want to
Yeah.
repeat anything that you shared with me already, if you whatever you feel drawn to do, but I'm happy to, just support your work, because my work is similar. I wrote a book about alignment and how alignment is like an inward experience, and I developed a method of somatic experiencing, really for beginners, very elementary, kind of crude in a way, for people who just don't like to exercise and don't like to do anything that's weird. So I made like something really, really simple and much more bland. Like really, like people who can barely move their arms. Like
Mm.
those are the kind of people that I want to connect with. But at least that's how I started. And now, I just see that it's also like we just need to hold each other, accept each other as we are, and then like foster growth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And starting to put ourselves back together has a lot to do with movement. It's like, how can we reconnect? We need to reconnect to our bodies first, and women have been so under the microscope for their bodies, right? And so much body stuff that's been coming up over the past decades. Um, and it's like all of the work is on the inside. Like even the portals that I was speaking about, they're actually inside of us. So they're outer manifestations in the woods so that people can sit there and experience in an environment that's very much like right there. It's not so imaginary. It's like
Right.
they can touch it for
Yeah.
those people who need to, and for those people who just want that powerful experience of being held within the forest, which is a field of absolute community and love to begin with. It's like the ultimate community. Like that's how I see the trees as they feed each other, right? They feed each other from the roots. They feed the trees who can't feed themselves, who can't reach the sunlight. They actually act as a very wonderful example of what community can be. And even as they die, they feed each other.
Mhm.
And they're allowing a whole ecosystem to grow around them. And it's just,
Don't forget the mushroom family, the fungi, they're huge. They
oh,
connect
yeah.
everybody under there, you know? It's just like
Yeah,
it's almost
absolutely.
like this it's just one big organism, right? An ecosystem.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So there are all the layers, and then there's all the communication that's happening, underneath the surface. And you just, like there's such a heart centered vibration that could be felt. And also an invitation for embodiment, getting back to that. So,
Yeah, I was going to ask you about like when you say portals, is that like a channel? Is that this what you mean by the word portal?
a portal to me is like a doorway that we get to enter into a new space using. So it's like dimensions inside of ourselves and dimensions outside of ourselves. It's just, as within, so without, right? So, yeah, we've got to heal our ecosystems on the inside so that we can grow ourselves in our lives and really see the changes on the outside.
Exactly. And
Really,
that's
we
that's
create a world.
that's yeah, you just lit me up. Okay. So like the the frustration that I have with the traditional like women and health model is that it's all about looking good and it completely bypasses your inner reality. Like I looking good is a byproduct of doing the work inside and feeling good because you don't feel like you look good even if you're gorgeous, but if you're not feeling good on the inside, right?
Right.
It's worth nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, except for the arm candy that you are for somebody else, except for your external value, or how
Right.
you value yourself as a, you know, being, 50 pounds lighter or, faces up like this and that. And, you know,
Yeah, yeah, totally. And it's not a kind of beauty that you can hold, right? Then you get up in the morning and you think you look terrible until you put on your face, right? And that's just not where we have to live from. We can know that we're beautiful from the inside out. And we have to come to understand that. Like we really do. We have to come into a profound acceptance of the sacred vessels that we're living in.
so how
And
do you cultivate acceptance? Is that something that you work with people on?
yeah, so it's really through embodiment work, like the nervous system, Feldenkrais, like the concepts of Feldenkrais um, are used in my work, which are to look for the pathways of ease, right? And not go into the problem areas because we grow ourselves from the pathway of ease. And then once we have that pathway opened up, then we can start to move outward a little bit and grow ourselves in all sorts of directions. And then we can go into the shadow. So it's not an avoidance of the shadow, but it is like, let's start in a less shadowy place that's not so scary. And then let's go in because the shadow is like how you get to the light is through the shadow. But, if so, you can't run away from it, but you can also do it in such a way that your whole system is not completely closing down. You have to be so gentle. It's like you have to feed yourself. So, how do you feed yourself? Well, with the breath, the breath, like very gentle breath into the heart space, listening to that breath, right? Like not assuming that you know what a breath should feel like into your heart space, but listening at any moment it can change. And it's a wonderful tool for knowing what space you're in.
I think what comes up for me is that there's this culture of doing this culture of a pace that's really not very humane. And
Oh
I
yeah.
find like getting people to e- even just to be interested or like why would they people aren't seeking this out unless they're already fried, unless they're already in pain, unless they're already reach a certain level of exhaustion,
Right.
which I have experienced burnout over the past few years. I just turned 50. So, I know that it's only when you really are boxed into a corner that you go, maybe I need to try to do something different. And like what you said about the path of ease
Yeah.
and how that's counterculture, right? Like,
Oh, totally. No
and
pain,
maybe
no
it's just
gain,
maybe
right?
I mean this my assumption, right? And you agree with me, but I come from a childhood CPTSD, and so many people don't even know that they do also.
Yeah,
But I have neurodiversity, I have ADHD, and these pieces make it like I always used to, because I felt like I had to prove myself all the time. Like that was how I got my value, was that I did it harder. I did everything harder because I thought that that was the way to earn my status. You
absolutely.
know?
Me too, in a different way, a different path, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's really
So
interesting
many of us
how
are in that, and we
this
end up in,
culture makes women so sick. Like they say, autoimmune disease is more common with women, and it happens in women's 40s generally. Of course, there's plenty of autoimmune disease in men, but disproportionately more in women. And I feel like that's because we have this war within ourselves, right? That's what autoimmunity is, or chronic pain, this
right.
war, and how to make peace, and like learning how to love ourselves is such a woo woo concept, and it drives me crazy that it's fringe, that it's uh, seen as entitlement. I mean, it's surreal to me that us having this conversation even is like an entitled thing, and it's infuriating because I think it really keeps a lot of people from finding what real peacefulness is. And I'm only just starting to learn about regulating my nervous system, making that a priority, because the
Oh,
nervous system is. And when you were talking on your website of all about nervous system stuff, I'm like, oh my God, I'm excited to talk with you, and
yeah,
see,
yeah,
see what we can grow together, or whatever, um, or even
yeah,
whatever is meant to be, like we are organic beings, and we'll just to have this conversation is creative, and that's an expression of like just growth, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Our nervous systems just sort of booby trap us until we take a look in there. It's like, all those triggers and everything, they're seated throughout the body and they need some movement, they need some breath, they need some light, they need some warmth, they need some unfreezing. And all of those invitations are in the nervous system work because really it's fundamental that we all have a wounding and we've got to get to it and we're here to work with it. And there's also the whole responsibility piece, right? Like we have to come to understand that we are not victims, that we are
Exactly.
here doing what we agreed to do before we came in for this lifetime, and that everything is happening on our behalves so that we can have these learning experiences. And we
Exactly.
may not be able to see every step of the way. We may not know exactly what we're getting from every experience, but then we can look back and we can put together the whole path. And it's like, wow, that really did unfold on my behalf, even though it felt at the time as I was being rejected in this place. If I was accepted, I would have a whole different life. That caused me to do X, Y, and Z and brought me to this place.
Mhm.
And how much I've learned and opened and grown from all of that. And it's like until we come into acceptance of ourselves as sovereign beings in these sacred vessels, in these bodies that really hold so much light if we allow them to, then we're lost and we're just sort of like in the wind. We have no real roots.
Well,
No,
we have routine and an emptiness about a routine,
right. We have our habits.
right?
We have our Feldenkrais always said if you have two choices, a yes or a no, you don't have a choice. You need three, at least three options to actually have a choice. There's got to be a continuum that we can see, as opposed to,
That's
oh,
appropriate.
it's got to be this or that. No, of course not.
Yeah.
And eventually we have to learn how to hold this and hold that. It's like we don't have to have two options and we choose one. We've got to realize when these things come into play in our lives and when we have to hold which one. And it's not like good and bad and light and dark and all these things. We have to hold the light and the darkness, right? Because
Yep.
that's what we are. We're shadowy beings. We're here
Right.
with wounding. So
Right.
so anyway,
We're yin and yang. We're whole
oh
and complete, and it's this. There is no light without the darkness. Of course, being a cliche, but like that, to learn to love the wound, and respect it as a teaching. I mean, that's how I've lived my life as well. It's interesting to me. It's like first time we've ever talked, first time we've ever met, and we have so much in common. And and why? And that's really not coincidental because I mean, I felt your truth from your website, even though you say that it's out of date for where you've grown into currently, and so is mine. But I pick up on the energy of it, and I go, she's speaking my language, and this language that people who are bravely leaning towards healing are starting to connect the dots, going, oh, I totally understand what she's saying.
yeah.
There's that instinctual remembering
Oh,
of
yeah, there's that
these,
gathering, right? Like
yeah, of
gathering of,
these truths. And
yeah.
when we connect with each other and we talk real with each other, and we go behind the, oh, I'm good, oh, I got doing this and I'm doing that, like we go deeper into, you know I'm kind of struggling today, whatever, or I'm feeling really anxious today, or all
Oh,
of
yeah,
these
our
real
rhythm,
conversations.
right?
We
Yeah.
really we're starved for connection, but it's
But
just really interesting to me how much in common we have through the wounding and through movement and through the desire to really like have that wholeness.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Something just came up for me, and I'm trying to remember what you just said that sparked
Maybe
sparked
it'll come back.
interaction.
I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you another question though. How long have you been doing like Feldenkrais? You started with Feldenkrais?
Yeah, I started with
Practitioner.
Feldenkrais, let's see, 17 years ago. Um, and and the reason why I started with Feldenkrais was because so I have four children, and my third child was born with Down syndrome. And so, we did like the typical PT stuff, and then we got to a point where, the physical therapist was sort of working with Nora and trying to get her to stand. And she was just crying, constantly. And when I asked what we're going to do differently, there was no answer. It was just, we're going to wait this out. It's maybe going to take 6 months of her screaming my name during sessions, which was completely not an option. And so I had to find something different. And so, there was something different. People came up to me, approached me, and said, "What are you doing differently with your daughter? Because there's something very different about her." And then one day, one of her therapists turned to me and was like, "You're always talking about this. Why aren't you doing this?" And I'm like, "Well, because I'm a high school English teacher, like I used to teach." So, and I wasn't teaching at the time. I'd been taking time off to raise the kids for quite a while. And I was like, oh, yeah, totally opened my eyes to a new direction. And so then I was enrolled within 2 weeks and, did 6 years of training for Feldenkrais. And
Wow,
first to do
exquisite training.
the regular training, and then 2 years to work with children. And I've worked with a lot of children with sensory issues and and then a lot of adults in pain and all sorts of different things. And then one day, one of my clients came in, and she came in with this totally different, like, kind of training under her belt. She had done Metatronic energy work, Metatronic healing, and and I just noticed, like, all of a sudden my life started to, like, I was like in the woods and I was having these like very playful, exhilarating experiences, and my heart was just like, wow, it was just like feeling, and I was so hard to even explain, to my husband what was going on. And I'm just like, and I had this time where I was in the woods at my old house. I used to live near the Catskills in New York. And, I had like four owls just come and land around me. And I was like, huh, and then I moved here, and the woods and the owls, they were like, I would move around the house and I would see one, and then I would move around the house, I would be on a different side and it would follow. And, just all of this stuff going on with animals and understanding their messages and the trees and the portals calling. And then so one of the ways that I work now with the nervous system work with, because Feldenkrais at the very base of it, or at the core of it, actually is nervous system work, right? It's using very gentle movements um, to reconnect and change habits in your body so that you can open up new pathways in your brain, re-landscape, right? Because we forget to use ourselves as whole. We only understand ourselves in pieces.
Mm.
And we start to move that way, right? I'm sure you've seen that. It's like when people reach for something, they reach with their arm and that's it. And they have no idea why they have shoulder problems, like
Mhm.
why they're tearing something. It's like
Yeah.
when you reach from like the tips of your fingers down to the opposite toes. It's like a beautiful movement
Mm.
and graceful and so easy. But we've stopped doing that, since we were children,
Yeah.
and we've gotten all this stuff.
Do you
So
dance?
I do not.
No, but you have an understanding of movement, so
Oh
such
yeah, there were a lot of dancers,
kinesiology.
a lot of
Yeah.
dancers in my
And that's how I
program.
know of Feldenkrais and the Alexander method. When I started talking about my movement, people automatically would say, "Oh, have you heard of Feldenkrais?" And I
Yep.
think intuitively, there's Feldenkrais who created it, discovered it, and channeled it or whatever. I don't know,
Oh
their
yeah.
story,
Sure.
but there's that universal truth again of awareness, you know,
Oh, absolutely.
and
Yeah.
being in tune with
Yep.
the body. So it's a process of refinement for me for sure. And I wanted to I'm gonna close this recording because I
Okay.
want to just have a little sidebar and thank you for being a part of this recording. Spontaneous,
Absolutely.
like just in case I share it, I thought we'd make it official. Thank you. Oh, do you want to share your website?
Sure. It's wisdomportals.org, or if people are looking for more local stuff in Connecticut, it's womeninthewoods.earth.
And you're based, what do you want to share the town?
In Norfolk.
All right, Norfolk.
So, yep,
I
northwest
could never say that.
corner. Yeah, icebox of Connecticut.
Okay. All right, cool.